Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com, promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in as we kick off another week. Here's what we're going to be talking about today. President Trump revealed on a Truth Social post yesterday that the U.S. has seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship after, quote, blowing a hole in its engine room when it tried to break past the Navy blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. We have the latest in the standoff between Iran, the U.S., and Israel. Authorities in Louisiana have identified the suspect, now accused of carrying out a deadly rampage that left 8 children dead over the weekend. And in another mass shooting, 5 people were wounded near the University of Iowa after a large brawl that broke out early Sunday morning. Representative John McCravy joins us today to highlight the great work that pregnancy crisis centers are doing to save lives. Last week, there were a couple of events showing support for the work, including Tim Tebow, who visited Greenwood to show his support for the Crossroads Women's Center. And should lawsuits and settlements of said lawsuits involving government entities be made available to the public for review? Well, the Post and Courier believes so and has a great editorial concerning a current settlement negotiation happening right now with the Greenville County Council. I'll share the editorial with you a little later in today's show.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
The U.S. seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship after blowing a hole in its engine room when it tried to break past the Navy blockade, according to a post on Truth Social by President Donald Trump. Fox's Greg Palcott in Tel Aviv reports.
An Iranian vessel tried to get past the quarantine, refused to stop. For the first time during this operation, U.S. service members went on board. He said in a post, in part, our Navy ship stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the engine room. Right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel. All this comes as talks are planned for Islamabad starting Tuesday between the U.S. and Iran. One state news agency blaming, I'm quoting here, Washington's excessive demands, unrealistic expectations, constant shifts in stance, repeated contradictions, and the ongoing naval blockade, which it considers a breach of the ceasefire.
According to the story, the USS Spruance destroyer intercepted Iran's Tuska cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman, taking custody of the ship after it refused warnings to stop, according to the president. In his post, he said, today an Iranian-flagged cargo ship named Tuska, nearly 900 feet long and weighing almost as much as an aircraft carrier, tried to get past our naval blockade, and it did not go well for them. He said, right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel. The Tuska is under U.S. Treasury sanctions because of their prior history of illegal activity. We have full custody of the ship and are seeing what's on board. A sitcom video shared online by Reuters chief national security reporter showed the U.S. Navy ship warning those aboard the Iranian cargo ship to vacate its engine room before firing multiple blasts. A Marine can be heard saying before the ship's horn blows, motor vessel Tuska, vacate your engine room. Now, the seizure of the Iran-flagged vessel comes as President Trump is pushing to lock down a peace deal with Iran before the 2-week ceasefire wraps up on Tuesday, tomorrow. President Trump told the Post earlier in the day that His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner will head to Pakistan for the talks. The White House confirmed that Vice President J.D. Vance will lead the discussions.
White House also telling Fox that Vice President J.D. Vance will lead the U.S. delegation in Pakistan on Tuesday. President Trump warned Iran again to take a deal, writing, "We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal. I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant, every single bridge in Iran." The current temporary ceasefire expires on Wednesday. Meantime, we're also hearing from the Iranians that they, according to state media there, have started rebuilding their stockpile of weapons ahead of that deadline.
That was Alex Hogan with Fox News reporting. But a top Iranian official has said that Tehran won't partake in the talks, citing concerns that U.S. demands are too tough. The state-run IRNA outlet said Iran stated that its absence from the second round of talks stems from what it called Washington's excessive demands, unrealistic expectations, constant shifts in stance, repeated contradictions, and the ongoing naval blockade, which it considers a breach of the ceasefire. President Trump has been emphatic that Iran must abandon its nuclear program, turn over its enriched uranium, believed to have been buried underground by the bombings by the U.S. The president also demanded that Iran agree to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that's been an on-again, off-again thing, because as soon as Iran reportedly had closed or had opened it, they closed it down the following day. They have wreaked havoc upon the global economy by sporadically opening fire on vessels trying to get through the Strait of Hormuz, where about a fifth of the world's seaborne oil supplies flows annually. And while they technically aren't blockading it, the Iranians, but the threat of doing so, the threat of attacking the ships, has so many of the carriers, the shipping companies, their insurers will not insure vessels going through there. So in effect, Iran is blockading it just simply by making it so dangerous that shipping companies can't get insurance for their ships going through. So what's going on in the latest? I mean, what's causing this uproar? What's the problem with we seem like we're taking a couple of steps forward and we take 3 or 4 steps backwards? Well, you probably heard the phrase, who's really in charge? Well, today that's the question hanging over Tehran, because over the weekend, another significant happening, it appears to have shifted inside Iran's power structure, not in the direction that suggests calm diplomacy or de-escalation. According to analysts, including the Washington-based Institute of the Study of Wars, Iran's hardline military wing, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, has effectively taken control of both military operations and diplomatic strategy. So in a nutshell, we got a whole new group that we're negotiating with, and they're not too happy to negotiate right now with Americans. At the center of all of it is Ahmad Vahidi. Now, Vahidi isn't just another general. He represents the hardline, no-compromise faction of the Iranian regime. And if these reports are accurate, he and his inner circle are now calling the shots, not just on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table, or whether or not they even sit at the negotiating table. And that's where this story really begins to matter. This is the Strait of Hormuz. It's one of the most critical shipping lanes on the planet. Again, roughly 20% of the world's oil passes through the narrow stretch of water. When it's open, the global economy hums along. When it's threatened or worse, shut down, you feel it as the gas pump almost immediately, and we're just lightly seeing it. Other areas of the world are just about to be strangled. It's under pressure. Over the weekend, Iranian forces reportedly attacked multiple ships attempting to pass through the strait. At least 3 incidents have been reported. Hundreds of vessels now stuck in the Persian Gulf. Oil markets are really getting nervous. And what's key here is there's been a deal on the table, but evidently the people negotiating the deal don't have the authority to sign it. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, who's considered part of the more moderate wing, had reportedly reached a tentative understanding with the Trump administration to reopen the strait. That would have been a major step forward. But then the deal fell apart. Why? Because the IRGC stepped in and said no. So again, it's like you're dealing with somebody who cannot deal in good faith because there's some zealots within the government who will overrule the negotiators who are at the table with the U.S. anyway. So what we're seeing now is not just a policy agreement, it's a power shift. The IRGC, backed by figures like Mohammed Bagher Zozadi, appears to have overridden the civilian diplomatic apparatus. In other words, the generals are now steering the ship, not the diplomats. And you don't know what's going to happen with these hardline generals. Now, where things really get more uncertain is the status of Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, who took over after his father's death. Has not made a public appearance since reportedly being injured in the early days of the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. So you've got a situation where the top political authority is largely out of sight, and the military leadership is stepping into that vacuum. So again, we don't really know who's running things in Iran, and that's a dangerous combination because historically when military factions take lead in regimes like this, diplomacy tends to take a back seat, or at least is unpredictable. And you can have an agreement that may not hold. So from the U.S. perspective, this whole situation, this power shift over the weekend really complicates everything. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Maybe the vice president and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, maybe they can come to terms and get a deal that will be a lasting deal. You don't have a weight problem. You have a body that's in survival mode, and no medication, crash diet, or app is going to fix that. Joey Hudson here, Ozempic, Wegovy. These GLP-1 drugs are exploding in popularity, and for some, they're a useful tool, but they don't address why your body started storing fat in the first place. At PhD Weight Loss, they treat the unwanted weight as a symptom, a signal that your metabolism, hormones, and stress response need some attention. When they correct those, the weight comes off naturally, and more importantly, it stays off. Because they're not just helping you lose weight, they're helping you increase health span and extend longevity. Right now, call PhD Weight Loss and mention Joey Hudson. You'll get 2 weeks free in the program, and they'll pay for your food. That's a $1,500 value, completely free. Call 864-644-1900. Do it right now. Mention Joey Hudson. Again, that's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. No more guessing, no more short-term fixes, just a smarter way forward. We have an update for you on the very disturbing and heartbreaking story out of Louisiana with the shooting that has left 8 young children dead. Also, another shooting in Iowa near the campus of Iowa University. We have updates on those. First, though, kind of an interesting story out of Clemson. Mark Wahlberg, the famous actor, opened up about the, quote, baggage that comes with being the child of a celebrity. Now, this was during an interview with Fox News at the premiere of his latest action comedy, a film called Balls Up. He discussed how he keeps his kids grounded as they grow up with a famous parent.
Well, look, they know Dad's just a regular guy. It just happens to be my job. You know, there are pros and cons to it, right? I mean, if they want to meet somebody, there's a good chance I could make it happen, but there's also a lot of baggage that comes with it, you know? And so, you know, I just try to stay as connected to them as possible and be just a normal dad every day that I'm not doing this.
Now, the reason he was talking to Fox about this is his eldest daughter is a student at Clemson University, where Mr. Wahlberg recently visited, taking over as bartender during one of the college parties she attended at a bar called The Roar, which is downtown Clemson. He said about the experience, it was a little difficult, especially the fact that here's my daughter now hanging out in a bar when I'm just thinking about her taking her to kindergarten, elementary school, but you know it goes by fast, and she's a wonderful young lady, and she's having an amazing time at Clemson. This isn't the first time that Wahlberg has crashed a party there. A couple years ago, he shared that he dropped in on a fraternity party while visiting his daughter at Clemson, this during Parents' Weekend. When speaking with Entertainment Tonight at that point, after the visit, he called the party nuts and added, "Parents' Weekend was incredible. They were having the most fun I've ever seen anybody have, ever, even more than her coming to Vegas," he said. "I was at the frat house and, a couple of spots in town." He has previously shared with the Today Show that he never really had too many regrets about not going to college himself until he experienced a frat party at Clemson University. So, Mark, you never know who you're going to see in Clemson, Now, we're following a deeply disturbing and heartbreaking story out of Louisiana, one that is already being described by officials as one of the most horrific acts of domestic violence in recent memory. The shooting in Louisiana claims the lives of 8 young children in what police are calling a domestic incident. Here's Fox's Colonel Scott.
A total of 10 people were shot in this incident. Of the 8 children killed, ranging in age from 1 to 14 years old, some of them, according to Shreveport police, were related to the suspect. Evidence is still being collected from multiple crime scenes. After the shooting, the suspect stole a car and fled, leading police on a chase to a neighboring city where shots were fired, killing that suspect. Louisiana State Police are investigating the officer-involved shooting. A specific motive is still not known. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry said he and his wife are heartbroken after hearing of this tragedy. Colonel Scott, Fox News.
Authorities say they have identified the suspect as Shamar Elkins, a former member of the Louisiana Army National Guard, now accused of carrying out a deadly rampage that left 8 children dead. Now, let that number sink in. 8 children, some as young as just 1 year old. Police say this all began as a domestic incident in Shreveport, Louisiana, quickly spiraled into something far more devastating. Investigators believe 7 of the 8 children killed were the suspect's own children. That just makes it's bad enough that you have murdered children, but especially when they are your own. Who does that? According to authorities, the violence unfolded across multiple locations. It started with the shooting of an adult woman believed to be the mother of the children. She survived. Another woman remains in critical condition, and a teenage victim was also injured. From there, police say that Elkins moved to a second location where the unthinkable happened. 8 children, ranging from 1 to 14 years old, were found dead inside of a home. After the killings, the suspect allegedly carjacked a vehicle at gunpoint. This sparked a police pursuit that crossed into a neighboring parish. That chase ended when officers confronted Elkins, and he was shot and killed at the scene. Wow. Fortunately, no officers were injured in this encounter. Officials say the scale of the tragedy has had an immediate impact on the community, as you can imagine. One local councilman noted this single act more than doubled the city's homicide count overnight. A staggering statistic that underscores just how severe this deadly, heartbreaking incident is. Investigators are now looking closely at whether there were warning signs leading up to the attack. Experts say these kinds of incidents often follow what's called a pathway to violence, gradual escalation, where grievances build over time until they explode into tragedy. Now, it's one thing when you have a spouse murdering their spouse. That's one thing. Maybe they've been in an argument. Things get heated. But when you take the lives of little children, you take the lives of your own flesh and blood, wow, I just don't get it. I don't know how disturbed you would have to be to do that. Of course, the focus now turns to the families, the survivors, a community that's trying to process what happened. 8 young lives lost in what officials are calling an act of domestic violence. Authorities are urging anyone with information in that area to come forward as they continue to investigate and try to piece everything together. Now, unfortunately and sadly, another shooting. 5 people were wounded in a mass shooting near the University of Iowa campus. And this one happened after what is being described as a large brawl, a fight that broke out early yesterday morning. Police confirmed this as they shared a photo of 5 persons of interest in this horrible tragedy. Iowa City Public Safety wrote in a Facebook post yesterday afternoon, 1 victim is in critical condition. The other 4 victims are in stable condition. And they had this photo of these 4 males with numbers beside them and asking for the public's help. The posting includes this picture. There are 5 young men, and the post says anyone with information on the people pictured here are asked to contact, and it gives a detective's name with an email and a phone number. Police say they were responding to a fight at the pedestrian mall in Iowa City around 1:45 a.m. yesterday morning, involving as many as 100 people when gunshots rang out. What is happening? Have you seen, those of you in the upstate of South Carolina? Seems like every other week a video goes viral on social media of a fight in downtown Greenville. And it's always of young people. And I don't want to sound racist here, but it typically, in fact, the last 3 or 4 have been young black people. The latest this past weekend of a young black lady literally beating another black person, and I can't tell if it's a male or a female because there are literally people standing around them watching. But this young girl is beating somebody, and the person is on the ground. Very similar to just a couple of weeks ago when 2 other black women were involved in a fight. And they literally, one of them ripped the shirt off of the other, and she's just running around topless fighting. And it really makes you just wonder or second guess whether or not you even want to go downtown Greenville. And these things are happening. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a fight in a mall. I think this was in Minneapolis, maybe. And it was all young black teenagers. Is it gang related? What is it? I mean, they were just beating. They're just beating each other up. Wow. This, according to the reports, this brawl took place in a very popular area, just a block from some parts of the Big Ten Iowa University campus. I don't know if it was university kids or local kids, but regardless, some parents need to take control of their kids because again, these are all seem to be young men and women who should know better, and their parents should know where they are. The Post and Courier has an editorial in their, I guess it was the weekend edition. And it's talking about how local governments, well, actually probably all levels of government, but this particularly is in reference to Greenville County Council, and how governments sometimes try to do things secretly because they don't want you and me to know what's going on. This revolves around a lawsuit that has been pending now for, I don't know, a year or two. And it involved Greenville County Council having secret meetings about raising the taxes of Greenville County residents. And the local legislative delegation sued Greenville County over their practices because it turned out that a group of county council members had meetings about the budget process, and they had enough to create a quorum, which you can't do. That's a no-no. So in effect, they had an unannounced public meeting without any public notice, and they raised taxes or they came to an agreement to raise taxes as a result of that. So that's sort of setting the scene here. You got this lawsuit that is working its way through the courts. So the Post and Courier writes this in their editorial. It happens routinely with South Carolina governing boards. Somebody sues the government. The government goes through a period of razzle-dazzle and delay, hoping the plaintiff will give up and go away. And finally, when it becomes clear that won't happen, the board gets a secret briefing from its attorney and directs the attorney to settle the lawsuit without giving the public any indication of how. Then the attorney presents the agreement to the plaintiff. The two sides go to court and ask a judge to approve their settlement, and it's an irreversible deal by the time the public finds out what's going on. They go on to write, even if the government was clearly in the wrong, in which case it never should have fought the lawsuit, if there's little wiggle room on the financial payout, the settlement often includes some entirely negotiable aspects, starting with a confidentiality clause that prohibits either side from telling the public what the government acknowledged or refused to acknowledge, and in some cases, even the amount of the money awarded. So in other words, you get sued for a secret meeting, but yet you have a secret agreement that the public never knows that you agreed to. And they're using our money to do all this. They go on to write, all disturbingly routine, but as the Post and Courier's Connor Hughes reports, the first part of this scenario played out recently in Greenville County in a case that would make for a great comedy routine if it weren't real. Greenville County Council got its secret advice and sent its taxpayer-funded attorney off to settle a lawsuit over the council's violation of South Carolina's open meetings law. Really, we can't make this stuff up, the Post writes. Now, we don't know if there's going to be a confidentiality agreement involved, and in fact, Mr. Hughes tells us that one council member is anxious to talk about the settlement once a judge approves it. But we know it'll be too late for voters to weigh in once they get any details, and the mere possibility that there could be secret aspects should trouble everyone who cares about our elected officials representing us instead of themselves. Post and Courier goes on to write, it doesn't have to work this way. In the first place, there's nothing that prevents city and county councils and school boards and other governing boards from having those discussions with their lawyers in public. State law merely allows them to be secret. And when the state law allows them to be secret, and this is me editorializing now, they're going to choose the option of letting it be secret because they don't want us to know what's going on. They don't want us privy to these conversations. They don't want us to know that they screwed up. Post and Courier goes on, there's certainly nothing to prevent the council from requiring its lawyer, once the plaintiff has agreed to the settlement, to bring it back to the council in an open session before presenting it to the court. In fact, we don't understand why that isn't required. Good question. Why isn't it? Well, actually, we do understand, the Post writes. It's because for all its grand talk, our legislature isn't really interested in requiring state and local government entities to conduct the public's business in public. If it were, it would put some serious enforcement provisions in the Freedom of Information Act rather than leaving its enforcement up to individual citizens who have the money and time to combat governments that don't care how much of our money they spend to avoid letting the public know what they're doing, much less acknowledging that they did anything wrong. And the Freedom of Information Act is there to supposedly allow you and me to know what's going on. Anybody can request information be made public. But there's a process, and the body that you typically are asking for it, that they have small fees, copying fees and that type of thing. They don't make the process easy for you. The Post and Courier kind of wraps it up saying, still, our legislature should require settlements to be vetted in public before they're submitted to the court. It also should prohibit state and local governments from entering into non-disclosure agreements. And until it does, any governing board that cares at all about serving the public will adopt this process on its own. Good point. Good point, Posting Corey. I agree with you 100%. We got way too many sweetheart deals taking place behind closed doors. One other quick thing here. If you purchase tickets to a concert or an event through Ticketmaster in recent years, you may have overpaid, according to a lawsuit. South Carolinians overpaid on concert and event tickets bought through Ticketmaster, according to a federal jury this past week, as a result of a major antitrust lawsuit that was filed in 2024 against the platform and its owner. Here's the story. After 5 weeks of trial and 4 days of deliberation, the 9-member jury concluded that Ticketmaster and its parent company, Live Nation, operated an illegal monopoly that prevented competition from other ticket companies, venues, and concert promoters. That led to higher prices for concert goers and other ticket buyers, according to the verdict. South Carolina was one of 41 states that signed on to the initial lawsuit, which originated in New York. Soon after the trial last month, 8 of those states and the Department of Justice, which filed the lawsuit under the Biden administration, accepted a settlement of $280 million. Now, here's where it pertains to those of you in the Palmetto State. The remaining states in the bipartisan coalition wanted the trial to continue, resulting in what South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson called a victory for the state. Wilson said in a statement, "This was a fight about fair market competition to ensure fans and artists aren't gouged by a monopoly that raises prices because it controls the entire concert system. My goal was to protect the people of South Carolina, and I'm grateful the jury looked at the evidence and ruled in our favor. How much South Carolina could receive in damages remains to be determined. The states will argue to a federal judge how much they believe the company should owe for overcharging customers. According to Wilson, the timeline is unknown. No court hearing has been scheduled, but it will eventually happen. And if you bought some of those tickets, you may be getting a refund pretty soon." That's it for today's show. Tara's up next, followed by Mike Gallagher, Bill Frady, Charlie James. I'm back again tomorrow at 5 a.m. and your first cup of coffee on Sunrise, Carolina. Till then, folks, remember, God's got this. He's still in control. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Across South Carolina last week, something pretty remarkable happened. 2 pregnancy resource centers, Carolina Pregnancy Center, Crossroads Women's Center, both hosted their annual fundraising galas, drawing strong support from communities that believe in walking alongside women during some of the most difficult moments in their lives. These centers are doing more than just offering these services. They're providing hope, support, real tangible help for moms, dads, families, long after a pregnancy decision is made. So what does that mean for our state? And what role should South Carolina play in supporting these kinds of organizations going forward? Joining us now to talk about it is State Representative John McCravy. He's been a strong voice on these issues at the State House. Representative McCravy, it's always a pleasure. Good to have you.
Great to be on, Joey.
So let's talk about, we saw a couple of big events last week. You and I shared the Carolina Pregnancy Center at Gala in Spartanburg. I had an unfortunate change in my plans and was not able to make it to Crossroads Women's Center, which I was planning to, but they held their annual fundraising galas. What does that level of community support say to you about the role these centers play here in South Carolina?
they really play an important part in saving lives. How many ministries can you be involved in that you can actually say, hey, we save lives?
Yeah.
And so both of these ministries, at both of these events, they put up on the screen pictures of babies, and every one of those were precious creations of God. They are a blessing, and they would not have been here in many cases except for this ministry of these centers. So it's really an incredible ministry, Joey. I get emotional talking about it because when I see those photographs, man, it just touches me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing to hear some of the personal stories. When you look at organizations like Carolina Pregnancy Center, they're offering everything from free pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, parenting classes, support with diapers and clothing. Talk about why it's important that these services are available outside of some of the government-run programs.
Well, these ladies actually come alongside. It's completely different than a government program where you have to get approved for this and that and the other, and you got to fill out paperwork. These ladies just take these women under their wings, and they become their social workers, and they help them with whatever they need. Sometimes it's rent, sometimes it's counseling, sometimes it's resources of different kinds, and they get down on their level and they say, hey, what do you need? And they fulfill those needs for them, and they do it with joy.
Yeah.
So I operate in the political realm. That's where the Lord called me. But, we can pass laws to stop abortion for birth control. But these women, they can find a place to get an abortion. They can figure out how to get one nowadays. And we can't prevent that, no matter what kind of law you pass. But these ministries is where the tire meets the road.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are actually on the front lines of saving children.
Mm-hmm. With me today, Representative John McCravy from Greenwood. Representative McCravy has been at the center of the fight for years now to protect life. Representative McCravy, you and I have talked about this many times over the years as you were in the trenches fighting for the fetal heartbeat bill multiple times. And, I remember a conversation we had soon after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And we both agreed that, okay, it's kind of like the dog chasing the car. All right, we've caught it. We've got what we've been fighting for years now. Now is the time. This is when the real work starts. Because we got to be there and we got to support these young women and organizations like Crossroads Women, Carolina Pregnancy. They're doing just that, aren't they? They're helping these young women through can be a difficult time in their life.
They really are. And I got to give a shout out to Alexa Newman at Carolina Pregnancy and Brenda Feast. These are the directors in Greenwood. These are the directors that really make it happen. They're committed. They've committed their lives to this cause. And it's certainly not for the money they make. They make almost nothing.
Yeah. But
they are out there fighting for these people. And I want to mention Tim Tebow. He was great in Greenwood last week. He got up and gave a message. It started out with God loves everybody, including the unborn. And then he gave his own story about how he was diagnosed when his mother was pregnant with him. They told her that she had a tumor, that he was a tumor.
Yeah.
And so he joked around a little bit about that, but it was they were encouraging her to get an abortion, and she said no. She prayed. They had a lot of prayer going up, and by the time he also during that pregnancy he had almost no nutrition from the placenta. It was barely attached, and so they were really skeptical about the entire pregnancy with him. The doctor said he didn't know how in the world he had lived through it, but look at him today. I mean, here he is, a Heisman Trophy candidate, and he said that the statistics show that we have aborted in America with the 60 million babies that have been aborted, at least 13 of them would have been Heisman Trophy people.
Wow.
So he gave that. And then the last thing he said was really funny, Joey. He talked about Stacey King, who was put into play with Michael Jordan in an important game. And in that game, Michael Jordan scored 69 points. It was a record for him at that time. And after the game, Stacey King, by the way, he was a rookie. They put him in. He scored 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
He attempted 3 or 4 shots, missed them all. But after the game, they couldn't find Michael Jordan, so they asked Stacey King what this momentous game meant to him. And he said, "I'll never forget this game because myself and Michael Jordan combined for 70 points." and he gave that as an example. You know, the Lord doesn't need us. God doesn't really need us, but he allows us to be a part of his mission work.
Yeah.
And so, you know, these ministries are so good, and we all need to be involved in them, saving lives. So anybody out there, please volunteer at your local crisis pregnancy center.
Yep. Well, and let me just say, Representative McCravy, it's always good to have you on, but I appreciate the fight that you continue to fight in Colombia to protect the lives of the unborn, and I appreciate that very much, and always appreciate your time, Representative John McCravy from Greenwood.
Well, it's always a pleasure, and it's certainly a pleasure to talk to you, Joey.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.